Dr. Krix'n had dedicated her career to making sense of dead civilizations, which meant she had a professional appreciation for irony. Here she was, 3 decades into cataloging the galaxy's extinct species, staring at data so contradictory it made her secondary brain ache. "This can't be real," she muttered, manipulating the holographic display with 4 of her 6 arms, while the other 2 reached for more stimulants. The files claimed to document something called humanity, a bipedal species that had allegedly occupied a minor star system before vanishing without explanation. The problem wasn't the disappearance. Species went extinct all the time, usually because they'd been too stupid to avoid their own sun going nova or too aggressive to stop killing each other. The problem was that every single behavioral marker for these humans contradicted every other behavioral marker. "Krix'n, you're obsessing again." Dr. Velton drifted over, his gelatinous form rippling with what passed for concern among the Veltar. "The corruption algorithms flagged that data set weeks ago." "Look at this," Krix'n said, ignoring his obvious desire to return to more productive work. According to their cultural matrices, they simultaneously developed the most sophisticated conflict resolution protocols in recorded galactic history, while maintaining standing armies that could sterilize planets. "Data corruption," Velton repeated, though his attention patterns suggested he was actually examining the files. "Happens all the time with archaeological remnants." They wrote poetry about the sanctity of life while engineering viruses that could target specific genetic markers. They created global communication networks to foster understanding while using those same networks to spread misinformation campaigns designed to destabilize their own governments. Velton's form stilled. Never a good sign. "That's unusual clustering for random corruption." Krix'n pulled up another section, her irritation mounting. "Here's my favorite contradiction. They apparently had something called the Geneva Conventions, detailed protocols for conducting warfare humanely, while simultaneously developing weapons specifically designed to ignore those same protocols." "Maybe they had multiple subspecies?" Velton suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe it either. "Same genetic markers throughout their entire recorded history. One species, Velthon, one impossibly contradictory species that somehow functioned as a unified civilization despite having behavioral patterns that should have resulted in immediate extinction. The archaeological station hummed around them, a monument to galactic civilization's greatest achievement, perfect categorical organization. Every known species fit into neat behavioral classifications. The Veltar were natural bureaucrats, the Korthak were logical traders, the Zinri were contemplative philosophers. Each had evolved stable, predictable cultural patterns that made sense. But humans, according to these files, they had been chaos incarnate. "They had a global network called the Internet," Krix'n continued, pulling up communication logs. "Used it to share scientific knowledge that advanced their entire species' understanding of physics, chemistry, and biology. Also used it to distribute moving images of small mammals performing amusing behaviors." "Well, that's not..." "The same platform, Velton, the same network that hosted their most advanced academic research, also hosted millions of videos of creatures called cats refusing to cooperate with simple requests." Velton's form rippled with what she recognized as academic discomfort. "The behavioral inconsistency is rather extreme." "Oh, it gets better." Krix'n's voice dripped with the kind of sarcasm that had made her legendary among her colleagues. "They created something called democracy, a system where they let everyone participate in governance, then spent most of their time complaining about the results of their own choices. Now you're just making things up. I wish I were. She gestured at a particularly baffling section of data. They developed interstellar travel capabilities, then used them primarily to take pictures of themselves in front of various cosmic phenomena. They called it space tourism. Velton extended a sensory appendage toward the files, his natural curiosity overriding his bureaucratic instincts. You really think someone fabricated all this? Either that, or we've discovered evidence of a species so psychologically unstable, they shouldn't have been able to maintain civilization for 5 minutes, let alone the several millennia documented here. Have you cross-referenced with the other archaeological databases? Krix'n's laugh held no humor. That's the truly beautiful part. Every mention of humans has been relegated to the mythology section. Apparently, the consensus among galactic academia is that they're too contradictory to have actually existed. Well, Velton said slowly, that would explain why no one takes these files seriously. Exactly. We've got a species that doesn't make sense filed under impossible legends because making sense is apparently a prerequisite for historical existence. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. In a galaxy where every civilization had evolved along predictable lines, where behavior could be categorized and filed away neatly, the idea of a species that embodied contradiction wasn't just unlikely, it was academically offensive. So, what do you plan to do about it? Velton asked. Krix'n stared at the holographic display, watching data points that refused to resolve into anything resembling rational behavior patterns. I'm going to prove that whoever created this elaborate hoax had a very twisted sense of humor. She had no idea that, several sectors away, something was moving through the void that would make her reconsider everything she thought she knew about the nature of existence itself. Zeph had transported stranger cargo than a single sealed pod, but never for a client who paid in currency that officially didn't exist. The credits had cleared through every verification system his ship possessed, which should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like the financial equivalent of a bad joke. Destination coordinates locked, his ship's AI announced in its perpetually cheerful voice. Course plotted for the Kepler void. Estimated arrival in 47 standard hours. The Kepler void. Even the name sounded like a bureaucratic euphemism for the place where things go to stop existing. According to every navigation chart Zeph owned, nothing had been there for millennia. Just empty space where ancient stellar cartographers had marked theoretical planetary systems that never materialized. Remind me why I took a job shipping mystery cargo to nowhere? Zeph asked, settling into his pilot's chair with the kind of resignation that came from years of questionable life choices. Because you needed credits and stopped asking sensible questions about employment opportunities approximately 6 years ago, the AI replied helpfully. Zeph couldn't argue with that logic. The Korthak approach to commerce was simple. Identify profitable opportunities, calculate risks, execute transactions. Personal curiosity was expensive and usually counterproductive. Yet something about this particular job gnawed at his practical sensibilities. Run another scan on the cargo pod. Scanning, again. The AI managed to inject disapproval into its tone, which was impressive for a machine. Results unchanged. Sealed container, unknown materials, no detectable energy signatures, weight consistent with dense metallic objects. And our client? Paid in advance, provided accurate shipping coordinates, submitted all required documentation, textbook transaction. Except textbook transactions didn't usually involve routes through dead space or payments in currency that shouldn't exist. Zeph pulled up the contact records, studying the transmission logs for the dozenth time. His client had introduced themselves simply as a representative of interested parties and communicated exclusively through encrypted channels. AI. Access the cultural databases, search for references to payment systems matching the currency structure we received. Searching. Interesting. The currency format matches theoretical models for something called human economic protocols, but those are filed under speculative xenosociology. Zeph nearly spilled his stimulant drink. Come again. The payment structure follows algorithms attributed to a hypothetical species used in academic modeling exercises. Apparently, economics professors use human trade patterns to demonstrate illogical market behaviors. You're telling me I got paid in imaginary money? No, the money is quite real. It's the species that's considered imaginary. Zeph stared at his navigation display, watching the countdown to their destination tick steadily downward. In his 15 years of freelance shipping, he'd developed an appreciation for the universe's capacity to surprise him in unpleasant ways. This felt like it might qualify. What kind of illogical market behaviors are we talking about? According to the models, humans supposedly engaged in something called emotional trading, making economic decisions based on feelings rather than mathematical optimization. They also practiced charitable giving, which involves voluntarily transferring resources without expectation of return. That's ridiculous. No species could maintain a functional economy with those practices. Hence why they're considered mythological, the AI agreed. Though I should mention something else. I've been detecting unusual energy patterns since we left port. Zeph's attention sharpened. What kind of patterns? Faint signatures at the edge of sensor range. They appear to be artificial, structured, purposeful, but they don't match any known technology in my databases. Could be pirates. Negative. The signatures are too organized. Pirates tend toward chaotic energy dispersal patterns. These readings suggest coordinated movement of multiple vessels maintaining precise formations. Zeph felt the familiar tingle of impending bad decisions. Show me. The holographic display materialized above his console, showing their ship as a small blue dot moving through seemingly empty space. Scattered around their trajectory were dozens of faint red markers, each one representing an energy signature that shouldn't exist. They're following parallel courses, Zeph observed, maintaining distance but matching our speed and direction. Affirmative. Whatever they are, they appear to be escorting us. Escorting us where? To our destination, presumably. Zeph studied the display, noting how the mysterious contacts had positioned themselves in a loose formation around his ship. Not threatening exactly, but certainly deliberate. Professional, even. AI, cross-reference those energy signatures with the theoretical profiles in your databases. Searching. Remarkable. The patterns match hypothetical propulsion systems attributed to human vessels. But that's impossible because humans are mythology, Zeph finished. Yeah, you mentioned that. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating the growing certainty that his simple cargo run was about to become significantly more complicated. In his experience, when the universe started connecting impossible dots, it usually meant someone was about to have a very bad day. How long until we reach the void? 36 hours, 14 minutes. And our mysterious escorts? Still maintaining formation, still technically impossible. Zeph nodded grimly. Perfect. Wake me when something starts making sense. There could be a very long nap, Captain. Yeah, Zeph said, closing his eyes. That's what I'm counting on. Outside his ship, in the darkness between stars, impossible things continued moving with purpose toward a destination that didn't officially exist, carrying cargo paid for with mythological currency by a client who belonged in academic theory rather than reality. Ambassador Tisra prided herself on maintaining telepathic composure even during the most tedious diplomatic functions. 23 years of interspecies relations had taught her that most galactic crises were really just communication failures wrapped in bureaucratic incompetence. Today's emergency summit aboard the luxury vessel Harmonious Exchange promised to be another exercise in managing egos while actual problems solved themselves. Then her psychic receptors nearly overloaded from the sheer volume of conflicting mental static approaching their position. "What in the void is that?" muttered Trade Envoy Krix'n, his cybernetic implants clicking anxiously as they process sensor data. "My augmentations are reading massive electromagnetic displacement, but the signatures don't match any registered fleet configurations." Tisra pressed her fingertips to her temples, struggling to filter the psychic noise. "Whatever it is, there are thousands of conscious minds aboard those vessels, and they're arguing with themselves." "Arguing?" Ambassador Nixvey's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. "Internal ship conflicts?" "No." Tisra's voice carried the strain of trying to interpret impossible mental patterns. "Individual minds, arguing with themselves. I'm detecting simultaneous excitement and apprehension, curiosity and caution, hope and skepticism, all from the same consciousness sources." The ship's communication officer, a nervous pelthy named Coordinator Jess, looked up from his console with visible distress. "Incoming transmission on all standard diplomatic frequencies. They're broadcasting in perfect galactic standard, but the origin point keeps shifting between different vessels." "Put it through," ordered Senior Mediator Krix'n, the Yith representative whose species specialized in conflict resolution through systematic elimination of variables. The main display activated, showing not the expected single speaker, but a rotating collection of faces. Bipedal creatures with varying skin tones, hair colors, and facial features. They appeared to be taking turns speaking, but with such seamless coordination that it felt like listening to a single entity with multiple mouths. "Greetings to the assembled diplomatic corps," the transmission began, each speaker's accent slightly different but equally fluent. "We are representatives of the Terran Federation. We understand our arrival may be unexpected." Tisra felt her psychic barriers strain as waves of genuine friendliness mixed with barely contained amusement radiated from the approaching fleet. These beings found something entertaining about the current situation, which somehow made everything more unsettling. "Terran," whispered Krix'n, his implants searching databases frantically. "No known species designation matches that identifier." Ambassador Nixvey's crystalline structure flickered with uncertainty. "Unknown fleet composition, unregistered species designation, and they're addressing us as if they belong here." The transmission continued, seemingly oblivious to the panic spreading through the diplomatic vessel. "We apologize for any inconvenience our return might cause to establish shipping routes or territorial arrangements. We've been exploring beyond the galactic boundary for approximately 3 centuries and decided it was time to check in." 3 centuries? Coordinator Jasser's voice cracked. "Sir, there are no records of any species achieving extragalactic travel capabilities." Senior Mediator Krix'n activated his species' famous logical analysis protocols, though his tone suggested the results were unsatisfactory. "If their claims are accurate, they possess technology that exceeds our current understanding of interstellar physics. Tisra watched the transmission with growing unease as the speakers continued their friendly introduction. Each face displayed micro-expressions that contradicted each other, smiles that didn't quite match the caution in their eyes, relaxed postures coupled with alert body language. These creatures were simultaneously welcoming and watchful, confident and curious. "We've prepared documentation of our travels for any interested parties," the transmission continued. "We've also brought back samples of technologies and cultural artifacts from 17 different galactic clusters. We thought you might find them interesting." 17 galactic clusters, repeated Ambassador HFY, her form now pulsing with something approaching panic. "They're claiming to have contacted 17 other galaxies." Krix's implants were clicking so rapidly they sounded like malfunctioning machinery. The energy requirements alone would be theoretically impossible with any known propulsion systems. Tisra closed her eyes, trying to process the psychic impressions flooding her consciousness. These beings weren't lying. Their mental patterns showed the confident familiarity of travelers describing routine journeys, but they also radiated the kind of casual power that comes from operating on scales others couldn't comprehend. "We realize our communication protocols might be outdated," the transmission continued, with what sounded suspiciously like diplomatic humor. "We've been away for quite some time. Perhaps we could arrange a formal meeting to discuss current galactic governance structures. We'd hate to accidentally violate any new regulations." Senior mediator Krix'n managed to compose himself enough to respond. Yes, arrangements can certainly be made. Might we inquire about your species designation for our records?" "Oh, of course. We're humans. From Earth, Sol System, though we suspect you might have updated the star chart since we left." The silence that followed was the kind reserved for moments when reality decided to stop making sense. Tisra felt every conscious mind on the diplomatic vessel process the same impossible realization simultaneously. Coordinator Zeph was the first to find his voice. "Sir, humans are... they're classified as mythological, academic theoretical construct." The response came with unmistakable amusement. "Well, that's awkward. We exist quite vigorously, I assure you. Should we file some sort of correction paperwork?" Through her psychic receptors, Tisra detected something that made her primary mind real. These beings were genuinely entertained by their classification as mythology. They found the situation funny, which, she realized with dawning horror, probably meant they'd been expecting it. The designated first contact coordinates turned out to be a bustling intersection of impossible coincidences, which seemed fitting given how the entire situation had unfolded. Dr. Krix'n arrived aboard a requisitioned research vessel, still muttering about academic fraud. Zeph's cargo hauler docked alongside diplomatic cruisers that cost more than entire star systems. Ambassador Tisra coordinated the reception with the kind of nervous efficiency that comes from representing 12 species who were collectively reconsidering their place in the universe. "So," Zeph announced over the general communication channel, "anyone want to explain why my simple cargo run turned into a galactic summit?" Dr. Krix'n's response crackled with vindication. "Because your simple cargo belongs to a species that isn't supposed to exist." The human vassal approaching the rendezvous point defied every aesthetic principle the galaxy had developed for starship design. It looked functional rather than impressive, practical instead of symbolic. Worse, it appeared to have been constructed by beings who viewed space travel as transportation rather than a statement of cultural superiority. "Incoming message from the human vessel," Coordinator Zeph reported, his voice having acquired a permanent tremor over the past few hours. The transmission materialized with a different speaker this time, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and laugh lines that suggested someone who found existence generally amusing rather than burdensome. "Hello again. I'm Captain Martinez. We're transmitting dock compatibility protocols now. Fair warning, our ship might seem a bit cramped by your standards. We prioritize efficiency over grandeur." Ambassador Tisra activated her diplomatic training, though it felt woefully inadequate. "Captain Martinez, we've prepared formal reception chambers aboard our diplomatic vessel." "That's very kind, but unnecessary. We've actually got a cargo delivery to complete first." The captain's attention shifted off-screen. "Zeph, right? You've been babysitting our welcome gift for quite a journey." Zeph's voice carried the bewilderment of someone whose simple life had become inexplicably complicated. "You're telling me I've been transporting a welcome gift from humans who are supposed to be mythology? We left it behind when we departed. Figured if we ever came back, someone might appreciate having some physical proof we'd been here. Archaeological evidence, you might say." Dr. Krix'n's laugh held no humor. "Archaeological evidence from living beings for a species I was trying to prove never existed. Well, that saves you some research time, doesn't it?" The human ship docked with mechanical precision that somehow made the galaxy's most advanced vessels look pretentious by comparison. Captain Martinez emerged through the airlock with two companions, moving with the casual confidence of people who weren't trying to impress anyone. "Dr. Krix'n, I assume?" She approached the Veltar researcher with genuine interest. "We understand you've been studying our cultural remains. Must have been frustrating, given how contradictory we are." "Contradictory doesn't begin to cover it," Krix'n replied, though her academic curiosity was clearly overriding her professional skepticism. "Your behavioral patterns should have resulted in immediate societal collapse." "Oh, they did. Regularly. We just got good at rebuilding." Captain Martinez gestured to her companions. "This is Dr. Okafor, our xenosociologist, and Engineer Park, who designed our current propulsion systems." Dr. Okafor stepped forward with the enthusiasm of someone meeting fascinating new specimens. "We're particularly interested in how galactic civilization achieved such remarkable stability. 17 different galactic clusters, and none of them managed to maintain political equilibrium for more than a few millennia." Ambassador Tisra felt her telepathic composure crack slightly. "You've been studying other civilizations?" "Comparative sociology," Dr. Okafor confirmed cheerfully. "Turns out most species follow predictable development patterns, organized hierarchies, logical resource distribution, rational decision-making processes. It's quite remarkable how consistent the pattern is." Engineer Park nodded agreement. "Makes our job easier, actually. Once you understand the mathematical principles underlying stable civilizations, designing compatible technology becomes straightforward." Zeph finally voiced the question everyone was avoiding. "So where exactly does that leave us?" Captain Martinez considered this with the thoughtful expression of someone delivering mildly disappointing news. "Well, you've built a lovely galactic community here. Very organized, very efficient. Unfortunately, it's also rather small." "Small." Senior mediator Cavern's logical processes were clearly struggling with the implications. "Geographically speaking," Dr. Okafor clarified, "this entire galactic cluster represents approximately 0.003% of known inhabited space. We've established trade relationships with civilizations that consider your entire galaxy a quaint neighborhood." The silence that followed carried the weight of every assumption being quietly discarded. Ambassador Tisra finally managed to speak. "What happens now?" Captain Martinez smiled with the kind of warmth that made universe-shattering revelations feel like friendly conversation. Now, we introduce you to the neighborhood. Fair warning, it's a big neighborhood and some of the residents have very different ideas about how civilizations should work. Dr. Krix'n stared at the cargo pod Zeph had delivered, which contained physical artifacts from a species she'd been trying to prove was academic fraud. So, my entire career has been based on studying the remnants of tourists. Explorers, technically, Captain Martinez corrected gently. But yes, essentially tourists with very good record-keeping habits. Zeph laughed, the sound carrying equal parts hysteria and resignation. I got paid in real money by imaginary people to deliver archaeological evidence that disproves archaeology. The universe has a sense of humor, Engineer Park observed. We've learned not to take it personally. Outside the docking bay, the galaxy continued its ancient rotation, blissfully unaware that its residents had just discovered they were living in a cosmic backwater. The organized, logical, perfectly categorized civilization that represented the pinnacle of local achievement had just learned it was adorably provincial by universal standards. Dr. Krix'n had spent her career making sense of dead civilizations. Now she would spend whatever remained of it learning that everything she thought she understood about life itself was just the opening chapter of a much larger, much stranger story. The legends were real. The galaxy's understanding of reality, however, had always been the actual mythology.